Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Hello, and welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast. I'm so glad to be here with you today. And if you're joining for the first time, welcome. If you're an oldie but a goodie, so good to have you back. So today we're going to be talking about this month, we're going to continue on with the theme of motherhood and leadership. A little light touch last week. Most of us are back into our regular routines. The storm has passed, quite literally. If you live in California, we've had lots of storm and rain and like flooding in the north, and where I am in the south, just rain, which actually is quite exciting for us in San Diego because we don't get that much rain. So it's actually pretty great. Except for when you want to take a little vacation. As my husband and I did, and we, you might have seen on the old Instagram, we got to enjoy nice walks out in the rain. I want to give a little shout out to the women who joined the Unchallenge and the community in my coaching group, Pathway to Peace. I'm just reflecting on the things that they shared with me over the holiday season, so kind of from Thanksgiving to Christmas and New Year's and beyond, and decisions they made because they intentionally stepped into the role of being the leader of their life. And they looked at everything around them and they decided what was best, and they did it. And the stories I got to hear about people having the most magical and most amazing Thanksgiving they've ever had. People saying, this is the first year I haven't cried all during Christmas. It's pretty amazing. So I just want to shout out to my people who are doing the work and are creating more of what they want. I also really enjoyed some time off this season. I was really anticipating having a break, and I got one. Yay me. It didn't come without kind of totally neglecting this community for a couple weeks, but I haven't figured out a way not to do that. So if you have any insight, let me know. But I ended up going up to Reno, Nevada to see and stay with my brother and his kids. And it was just a great time to get away. And I read a whole book practically while I was up there, which is pretty quick for me. I'm a slow reader. But it was nice. It was nice to do something different, get out of my own home and take a break specifically from the doctors and the therapies and all that it takes to manage lives like ours. Today, we're going to talk about, again, the theme of mother and leadership, but specifically, we're going to talk about doing the quote unquote right thing, learning to trust our gut. Also getting over the fear of doing the wrong thing. And you might wonder, how is this tied into leadership? Well, I consider listening to your intuition a huge part of your role as a leader. Also, you'll notice that if you observe any leader out there, they are really good at making decisions and moving forward and not vacillating and questioning and doubting. I mean, it's not like they're going to be perfect at this. Nobody is. However, for the most part, good leaders are also very good decision makers. And as you know, there are so many decisions that we have to make as special needs parents. I mean, just consider types of therapy, how often they go to therapy, who their therapist will be, alternative options. Are you going to go through your insurance? Are you going to go through alternative medicine and pay out of pocket, optional meds, right? So this is a whole nother category. We have meds that keep people alive. My son takes quite a few of those. But then now we've entered into the territory of optional meds that either can support him behaviorally or in a couple of other different areas, and how we make all those decisions. What to let go of and what to pursue. Think of the school system. What do you really push on and have be an issue, and what do you just not? And then managing behaviors. Oh my gosh. I mean, all of these are such big topics, but there's so many decisions that we have to make every day. And some of them are big. Some of them are big decisions, very life impacting. It can be dizzying. We can just end up so spun up on all that is in our space and all the decisions that we have to make, especially if we're not relating to ourselves as a leader. Obviously, we want the best for our child. We want to know that what we're doing is going to be the most helpful for them. We don't want to hurt our child by potentially making the quote unquote wrong decision. And so knowing the best when there literally is so much that we don't know the future. There's just so much that we don't know. There's so much that is unknowable, again, because it is in the future. And so this can leave us constantly questioning ourselves and doubting and living in this place of just huge insecurity. It's very different, I want to suggest, than uncertainty. Insecurity, I would assert, is not a feeling that you would ever want to have on purpose. It's not a very empowering feeling. I just kind of picture me in insecurity, and it's very low in terms of a vibration. And it is very isolating, and it is very depowering. It's not really a word, but we're going to go with it. It just takes away. It's like the sails are deflated. You're not really moving forward. You are insecure. And so we don't want that. We want to actually have security. We want to have the experience of knowing that we're doing the right thing, even though we obviously don't know the future. And so clearly, since we're having this conversation, if you're somebody that often doubts that you've made the right decision or has a really hard time making a decision because of fear of making the wrong decision, you're not alone. If you look back at some of the decisions that you made with regret or even self-blame, you're not alone. Today, we're going to gently step into the new year, and instead of focusing on goals and big aspirations, we're going to focus on who you want to become. And I want to suggest that you might want to become a confident leader. So this is one who doesn't undermine herself with self-doubt or with insecurity. I want you to picture yourself as a leader who makes decisions confidently and trusts that you made the quote unquote right decision. Back in episode 116, I talked about the different path to peace stages. The first stage being that stage where you're like stunned and surviving. It's right after the initial diagnosis where you're just taking in so much is new, and you quite literally might be in the survival state, both for yourself and your child. And eventually, it takes on different timelines for different people, but eventually you'll find yourself stabilized and probably a little too far over to the side of caring for your child. And you'll find you've completely lost yourself. I call this stunned and surviving. And so you exhaust yourself in this stage. You really deplete yourself. You lose yourself because you're so fixated on fixing and supporting your child that you cannot see anything else. And then you arrive at stage 3 when you become at the bottom of this pit of exhaustion and hopelessness and maybe even just feeling stuck. And you come to stage 3. I used to call this afraid and alone. I now call this the rebellion. I like that a lot more because this is where you're actually pushing back against this idea that you're going to be stuck here forever. Whether you're at the point where you're like, yeah, I'm not going to be stuck here forever, or you're more likely, I cannot do this forever. I have to find something else. This is not no, I don't want it. This is not what I want the rest of my life to be like. And so this is the place where you come to me. Usually it's when you find the podcast and you're really questioning how things have been. And I want you to consider that you're really questioning who you've been. And this is the time where you actually consider becoming on purpose a new person, a different person, I should say. And specifically, one of the aspects is considering yourself and relating to yourself, your new identity, as being a leader. And most of us, I've mentioned this before in the podcast, most of us don't think of mother, and leader is not necessarily the first word that we associate to motherhood. That's why I'm doing a whole month on this, is because I think that we actually have missed a big piece of motherhood, of what it takes to actually be the leader as a mom who we want to be. So I want to look at this from a couple different angles of making decisions, specifically looking at the right decision and trusting your gut. So the first thing I have to mention is there's no such thing as right. I want you to picture 2 different paradigms. The first one, picture yourself in a forest, in kind of a clearing, and you're looking out ahead of you and you see all the trees, and there's like 20 different paths or trails you can take. Each one would lead to a different result. Each one clearly would have its own particularities, its own obstacles and challenges. Some of them might not actually get you to where you want to go. Relating to these 25 different trails as though as one of them is right and the other 24 are wrong is the way a lot of us approach life. So you can imagine how difficult this would be, especially when you're looking at something that is so incomparable in terms of like you really can't get the data that you would need to get to be able to know definitively which one trail was the right trail. And so it becomes something that is really difficult to have anything other than doubt and insecurity if you're approaching it in this way. And the way that I'm referring to is relating to one as though it is right and the others are wrong, and that you have to find that right one or else. So let's look again at option B. And I want you to consider that you're at the same trailhead, the same little opening, the mound in the forest, with those 25 different options. The difference here, you're going to observe all 25 trails, and you're going to evaluate what you already know. You're going to consider where you want to go, and you're going to make a decision. You're going to make a decision based on knowing who you are and knowing how you will react when you approach an obstacle or potentially even a dead end. You get the confidence when you know that you are the person that will keep going to achieve your desired result. That it's not about the trail, it's actually about the person on the trail. Knowing that you can turn around at any point when you know something perhaps that you didn't know before, that you can change your mind when it feels right. So you no longer have to get this perfect or you have to get this right. And so therefore, one, you can move forward more freely. So likely you'll be making more decisions and moving forward more quickly because it doesn't take so much time and have so much pressure associated to any one decision. And it's easier to move about the world when there's less pressure. And it gives you peace. So you now have peace because it's not about choosing the right trail. You have peace because you know who the decision maker is, you, and you know who you are. You know you're the person that is intentionally looking for the best for their child and yourself. You're taking the whole picture in. You're not stopping when it gets hard or difficult. And so you don't have to get peace from the outside, external, what's happening, because guess what? We'll never find it there. You get to have peace because you know who you are. And that is a big paradigm shift. So that's the first point. And so we can move into the second point, which really builds off of the first. And I want you to consider that instead of making the right choice, you're going to make the best thing now choice. There's no right, but you still need to make a decision. And so I want you to consider that what you're choosing over and over again is the best thing now. So this will require you to listen to yourself, and it will require you to allow others to have a different opinion in many cases than you will. This reminds me of a time where we were evaluating my son's IEP, and because he has a physical disability, he's eligible to receive physical therapy or physical therapy services through school. And the way that his school is designed, they don't have traditional PE. They don't have a special time of day or place for that. Of course, they do some physical activity, but it's not like a traditional middle school where he's going to have a whole class. And I'll spare you all the details, but basically, the decision my husband and I made was that we will decline services for physical therapy. We looked at the overall experience he was having at school. We look at the overall challenges he has at school. And we just decided that focusing on physical therapy at school is not the best thing now for him. And it's really interesting to observe the rest of the IEP team, and specifically the physical therapist, who doesn't occur, I might be wrong, that they think that we're making the right decision. I think they don't understand, which is totally okay, because they are not the parents of my son, and they don't live the life that we do in supporting him. And so for us to make the decision that is the best thing now for him, it does require us to have other people potentially disagree. And sometimes that can be really hard. The other thing about living in the best thing now is that making decisions is a skill to practice. And so I want you to consider that wherever you're at now is your starting point, and that you can relate to yourself as somebody that is getting better at making decisions. That actually the skills that it takes to be decisive, to trust yourself, to gather information and then know when to make a decision is a skill. And so you're practicing this skill. It's never going to be perfect, but it will get to a point where you're like, I am good at making decisions. And that is a nice skill to have because it really builds on your own confidence again. And speaking of decisions, I want to move on to point 3, which is intuition. How do you hear your intuition? Well, this could be a whole podcast. So we're going to just lightly touch on this. I want you to have a couple areas to consider and to contemplate. And maybe in the future, I'll bring an even deeper episode. One of my favorite sayings is the answer to any how question is practice. Take that in for a second. So the idea here is we ask, how do I listen to my intuition? And my answer is, you're going to practice it over and over and over. And especially, I can't think of anything that is like more accurate here, is there's not a formula to listen to your intuition. One, everybody's is very unique to them on how they actually listen and like sense their intuition. There's a lot of reasons for this, but we will just say that that's enough to go on for now. And I also want to just put something out here because there is intuition, but I think I want to put something here because as a Christian, I am Christian, we believe that we have what's called the Holy Spirit dwelling within us. The Holy Spirit is described as counselor, a guide. It's somebody that's literally advocating for us. And this is something I want to mention here because it's something I'm practicing leaning more into. And if you're a Christian, I want to invite you to do the same. That yes, you have your intuition, but you also have the gift of the Holy Spirit. And if you're not Christian and not familiar with the Holy Spirit and the concept I've just mentioned here, I'd welcome you to email me or to find a way to contact me, and we can talk about it. We can learn about it. It's something I'm always intrigued on and wanting to learn more myself. So I'd love to chat with you about it. So back to how do you listen to your intuition? Well, one of the major things is you have to get out of your head and into your body. Your intuition does not come from your mind. Isn't that weird? We gather all this information, data, facts, and then we interpret it. We figure out what we think is helpful, what we think is not, where we think we need more information. So that's kind of the head conversation, right? That's the gathering information, and that's the head-based conversation. But your intuition, you describe it as your gut. And so you might feel it in your gut. But I would say as you learn to practice to listen to your whole body, you learn that it's actually not a head-based conversation. It's almost like for me, the way that I experience my intuition is a very slight leaning. It's just a little nudge. It's so subtle. And so you have to practice listening to it. But it's so powerful when you recognize that you can at any point trust yourself because you know how to listen to yourself. And so how you hear your intuition is going to be very different from mine. And again, it goes back to practicing. And as you practice, I want you to consider looking back at a time in your life where perhaps you look back and say, wow, yeah, like I actually, my gut said something different. I didn't listen to it. Or you look back and you regret something and you get curious about these moments. You look back at that time where you didn't trust yourself and you start to wonder, okay, what was it that I missed? What did I not listen to? What did I not trust? And without blame, you bring this curiosity and you say, okay, well, I'm going to actually listen to that more deeply next time. I'm going to follow that nudge next time. And then you practice doing that and you see how that feels. You see what happens. And so the game is all about playing with this practice. One of the things that was particularly helpful in following my gut recently was, lucky for us, our insurance started to decline one of the medications that my son takes. It's in the optional medication category, so it's not sustaining his life. However, it was really helpful. And we got a letter around October, November saying from our insurance, sorry, we're not going to cover this anymore. Although I don't think they said sorry. Anyhow, so we called the doctor, consult with the doctor, and had a series of conversations about options. And so I'll spare you all the details, but basically one of the options was another med. And so we talked extensively on the phone. I shouldn't say extensively. We talked briefly on the phone about this med that the doctor was considering that said is an option. It wasn't her first choice. And so she sent me all the information on this med. It was actually over Thanksgiving. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I'll get to that when I'm not with my family. I will go and I will study and I will make a decision based on what I learned. And so a couple of weeks went by and she emailed me saying, okay, so what are you thinking? What's your decision? And I pulled up the email with the information on the drug. And I sat there for a second. And I knew at that moment, I was like, you know what? Like, even when she was describing this med to me, my intuition was like, no, this doesn't seem like it would be the best next step for Levi. And so I didn't have to go read and study and contemplate in this case. I just had to listen to this small nudge. And it was interesting because then I emailed the doctor saying, I don't even know what I said, but basically I said, no, we're not going to do that. Just not going to try that drug. I don't feel comfortable with that. And then she emailed me back saying something like, you are so great to work with as a parent. And I was really taken aback because this doctor, she has a very direct style of communication. And oftentimes I don't feel like she's thinking we're doing that great of a job. And, I don't know why I think that, but let's just say that we kind of have an ongoing joke in our family about like who gets to take Levi to that doctor appointment because it's not very pleasant. However, clearly I think this doctor is good in other ways, minus her bedside manner. So we keep going. And for a lot of the gals in my community, you know exactly who I'm talking about because I've talked about her a lot. This made this decision just take so much less time and effort. Because I had that nudge, I listened to it and I moved on. And I feel really good about the decision. Will I change my mind in the future if I learn more information? Maybe. I might do that. But for right now, this is the right decision. I want to jump to the last point of this conversation. And that is, I think it's going to be the most surprising one. But the last point is community. You might be thinking, Kara, how does community have anything to do with being a leader and being a mom, besides just kind of being more enjoyable? Well, I want you to picture any major leader, like the president or any CEO, a school leader, an organizational leader. A very specific part of their job is to surround themselves with people they rely on to either perform different areas of expertise or to gather information for them so that they then can make the decision. And there's two pieces here. One, they're the person that's taking responsibility for the decision, but they have tapped into the power of community. And they don't call it community. They would call it a board or executive panel, or they'd call it something different. But I just want you to imagine like the exponential power that you have as a mom if you have a community that you've tapped into. So for some of you, this will be those specific Facebook communities that focus around the particulars of your child's conditions or condition, where you can go in there and you can ask a very specific question and you can get answers based on their expertise. Those are so valuable. Or there might be other groups where it's more of a, hey, this is what I'm facing as a parent. What do you think? And then other communities are going to be more specifically focused on you. That's going to be more similar to like the Pathway to Peace community, where we're really looking at who you're being and how you're being as a mom and what you're doing to have it go how it's going for you. And so this power of community, clearly I can't stress enough of what's available to you when you are in and involved in community, and specifically communities that support you. There's this saying in coaching, I'm sure you've heard it elsewhere, but it's that you don't know what you don't know. And so inside these communities, one of the gifts is observing other moms. You get to see how other moms are functioning and even just be exposed to different ways of doing things, but specifically different knowledge that they have. I'm thinking of a mom that really has been an expander for me in my community. Her name's Gay, and she's going to actually be a guest coming up this month on the podcast. And she is like radical in the way that she has stepped into the role of advocate for her daughter. And we'll obviously get into all the details when we talk to her. But for me, what I want to point out here is that seeing what she has created for her daughter radically changed what I believed was possible for my son. And so this is what I mean by community, right? If she was not part of my community, I would not be able to have had this exposure to what I did not even know was possible. Like literally, I did not know the things that she knows. So I didn't even know to dream about it. And so having her part of my community has been a huge expander and like really important as I move forward and make decisions and become the leader of my family. Let's wrap this up. And the last point on community I want to put in here is that it's like exposure therapy. When you see moms doing things in a different way than you would have considered doing it, it becomes normal to you. And what comes to my mind for this is one of the women who's been a past member of the coaching community. She declines all medical forms when she takes her doctor to the doctor. She just simply says, I'm not going to do that form. And in her case, she's like, I can't do it. Like I got my hands full with my daughter. It's not going to work. And we all know, like 95% of the times, nobody looks at those forms. And so therefore, she just has decided decisively, I'm not going to do it that way. Now, do some people get upset about that? Yeah. Some people in the offices probably get a little bit like miffed that like, oh, wait, you're not doing the things that we think you should do the way we think you should do them. But I love this mom's stand for her ability to just say, I'm not doing it that way. And she trusts that that's the right way. And she trusts that that's going to not impact her daughter in a negative way. This exposure therapy of seeing people do things a different way to the extent that then now you might do it this way and it becomes your new normal. We are going to wrap there. I think that clearly this is not an exhaustive list. I could literally talk all day about this topic, about making decisions, about trusting your gut, about forgiving yourself when you look back and realize I didn't make the decision that I think is best now. And so these are just some points I want you to consider as you move through this month, as you step into this role of motherhood, as you consider who you are becoming, to start to implement being the mom who trusts herself, makes decisions, and knows that she's doing the quote unquote right thing. All right, we'll see you on the next episode. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes, get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.